Hello, I am Devashish Chakravarty. Let us take a look at JV or a joint venture. A joint venture is a legal entity created by two or more firms for a specific economic activity. In simple words, it means that two or more companies can come together, sign a legal contract, create a new legal entity with a new name in order to do one specific business. The interesting feature is, then how is a joint venture different from a new company per se? In this case, the purpose of the joint venture is clearly defined, that it will engage in that particular activity. There is a time limit which is laid down, and there are some terms and conditions which will lay down the roles of all the parties in that joint venture. Let's take a look at the time limit. Based on the time limit, at the end of the time limit, both the parties will dissolve this new joint venture, and they have agreed upon the process on how it will be dissolved. Of course, a joint venture can be dissolved earlier than that if both the parties are agreeable or due to a court order, which could arise out of legal complications which threaten the existence of the joint venture or out of a dispute between the two parties. Typically, a joint venture is not about doing a one-time project, but to do a repeatable economic activity. Where it is about a one-time project, it is more correctly referred to as a consortium. A consortium is a group of companies who get together to create a legal entity to fulfill one particular project. For example, the tunnel that was dug between England and France, also known as the Channel, the tunnel under the Channel, that would be called a consortium. Also interestingly, joint venture as a term is primarily used only in the United States and in newly emerging economies, that is India and China. It is not so commonly used in Europe. What are the advantages that firms get in building a joint venture as opposed to starting a new firm? The advantages are in three primary areas. The first is access to resources, second is reduction of risk, and the third is because it is required by law. Let us look at the first one, access to resources. So firms may have various strategic interests in starting a joint venture. Remember that the role of each firm in the joint venture is very clearly defined in terms of how much money and equity they bring to the joint venture, what is the control responsibility, the managerial responsibility, the various expenses, and how will the income be distributed. So first, when we talk about a company starting a joint venture for access to better resources, it is looking at the resources of the other firm. The other firm can have various resources as access to vendors, access to clients, maybe access to cheaper funding. It might be simply technology or branding. A large number of resources that one firm lacks, it will try and engage another firm in a joint venture to have access to those particular resources. And the second firm in return would be looking at some other set of resources that the first firm can bring to the table. The second part is reduction of risk. In various projects or economic activities where one firm alone may not have the risk appetite or the capital or the managerial inclination to take on the complete risk, it would try and share those risks by calling in similar firms. In the first case, they were dissimilar firms who were trying to monetize the resources of the other firm. In this case, it's often by similar firms who share the burden of the risk because the project is too large and they don't have the capital or they don't have the risk appetite. In the third case, it is required by law. How would it be required by law? It is because the laws of a country may prevent some firms from operating there directly and under their own legal entity. In such cases, these firms typically would partner with local firms who are permitted by the legal framework to operate and thus create a joint venture. What are the pitfalls of a joint venture? The primary pitfall of a joint venture is that the chances of failure might be high. What factors contribute to the chances of failure? First is the legal factors. The legal factors might change, thus making the economic activity unviable by the joint venture. The second factor relates to the styles of operation of the two companies in the joint venture. Any kind of disagreements arising out of different managerial practices, about how the various income and expenses will be distributed, about what controls and decisions will be taken. These are few of the typical reasons that cause joint ventures to fail.